really looks like the second best, without question, receiver in this class. Him and Zay Flowers are 1 and 2. I think JSN helped himself a lot on Saturday.
Yeah, I think JSN was the big winner. Sorry,
Yeah.
I think Flowers was the big winner of the week. Just he runs a good 40. He measures in well. Addison didn't measure in well, didn't run a good 40. Quentin Johnston didn't run. A lot of questions about that. I know JSN did well in the agility drills, but a lot of teams want to see straight line speed. So I won't say he hurt himself because the agility drills were very impressive. But I still think Zay Flowers comes away from the weekend wide receiver 1.
Do you know, and has it come out, if JSN's going to run at the Ohio State Pro Day?
Well, it's an injury thing, so I think it's probably too early to tell.
Okay. Interesting. But I mean, again, I just think that, we talk about straightaway speed. That's not really his thing. I know it hurts a little bit, but I thought everything else helped him enough where he's still – is he going to be there at 14? And would you take him at 14 if you're the Patriots? Because what I saw tells me, yes, take him. I tweeted a mock draft earlier. I've tweeted about it, the last 2 days, that if JSN's there at 14, I'm now taking him. What say you?
I don't think they're going to I don't think he's going to be there. I don't think he is. I see too many spots where it makes sense for him to go. If my draft order will load here. I think that the Eagles make a ton of sense. Like that's a sneaky strong spot where you can come out in 11 because they're in a position picking 10th with that roster where they can sort of have fun with it. Right. They've got a big guy. They've got a burner. So you had a shifty guy, and now all of a sudden you've got every matchup across the board. I think the Titans are in a spot where they very much need a wide receiver. They've got to make good on that AJ Brown trade. And then the Texans at 12, honestly, you reunite him with CJ Stroud. That's all the rage right now, right? Reuniting college quarterbacks with their receivers. So, and I know that he didn't play a ton. Stroud was this year, and it was Fields. Or no, Fields was 2 years ago.
It was Stroud. Stroud was his good year.
It was Stroud. You're right. So that's all there. And then you never know who's going to trade up. There's a number of teams further back. I think the Giants are a team that's a threat to trade up and take a receiver. I think the Packers are a team that's a threat to trade up and take a receiver. I wouldn't sleep on the Steelers doing that. The Ravens. So, and look, the Patriots could as well. But I almost think that all of the receivers testing poorly outside of Flowers is actually going to help some of their draft stocks. Because I think now you're going to get this thing where this isn't a deep wide receiver draft and teams are going to panic and make sure they get their guy and maybe move up and overdraft. And I think that may actually help the Patriots because if they're all coming up to take receivers, I actually think it's going to push some tackles down the board. But
that's fair.
I don't think JSN makes it to 14. I think there's too many spots that make sense. And I think, look, I have him as wide receiver 2. So I mentioned all those landing spots, right? Mm-hmm. I think Zay goes ahead of him. I think there's a chance Quentin Johnston goes ahead of him, but there are going to be teams that have JSN number 1, their number 1 receiver on their board. So if you think he's going to make it to 14, basically what you're saying is you're confident that none of those teams above the Patriots that need a wide receiver have JSN as their number 1 receiver. And there are teams up there. Again, whether it's the Texans who certainly need just without even trades, whether it's the Texans who need a pass catcher, whether it's the Eagles who could use one, whether it's the Titans who need one.
But do the Eagles really need one? Because you have AJ Brown and
no, but they're a wild card. They can take anybody they want.
How did they get?
So that one's a little different. The Saints last year.
Oh yeah, that's right. Okay. Yep.
So I shouldn't throw the Eagles out, just the order I looked at it, but I'll say this: like, how far back do the Bears move? Yeah. If it's the Raiders at 7 moving up, JSN at 7 is not a stretch to me. If it's even the Panthers at 6 moving up, I don't think that's a stretch. So there's too many teams that would want him.
Yeah, that's a fair point. But I think that I think Zay and sort of transitioning into that now. Quentin Johnston, he's going to be a top 15 pick. So is Zay Flowers. I think Zay is going to be the first wide receiver off the board. I think he's going to be a top 8 pick. I don't think he gets past Atlanta.
I'm going a little later in that.
Okay. I think he's number 1 off the board, though. No question.
I have him as, I can tell you right here, and I'm still tinkering with this. It'll be up tomorrow on 985sportshub.com. I have him as my second receiver off the board.
Okay.
And the reason for that is the team I have taking wide receiver first basically has a guy like Zay, and they're taking a different wide receiver to add a different skill set.
Good tease.
But yeah, I think those three all go within the top 15, and I wonder now if Jordan Addison's a first round pick at all.
That's where I was going to transfer into right now because Addison did not run well, Alex. He just didn't. He finished off with an official 4.49, which we talked about it. I've said it. It's not all about speed. It's really not. And you're talking about tenths and hundredths of a second here. So the difference between a 4.49 and a 4.47, whatever, if you think about it on NFL Sundays. But he also weighed in at just 173 pounds. So if you're going to be that small, you do need to have your speed. Look at a guy like Devontae Smith. The reason he can play at 165 pounds is because he's a top five fastest receiver in the NFL, Devontae Smith. So Addison, I thought he's going to be a first round pick. I don't think he's going to fall out of the top 32, but I think he definitely falls out of the top 15 after what he put on tape this weekend. And it's tough because he's a guy who Biletnikoff winner 2 years ago, two systems, Pitt and USC. He showed out at both, but I mean, you got to show some speed when it matters most, and he just didn't do that on Saturday.
And he came in small as well, and that doesn't help him. The one thing I wonder, though, the one thing I wonder, and I said it with JSN, is these teams trying to get their young quarterbacks comfortable by getting them familiar weapons. The Steelers sitting there at 17. Right. They dealt, it's been too many names, too many days. They dealt Claypool last year. So they still have Deontay Johnson, but he was rumored to be looking for a new contract and a guy they might trade. And then they have George Pickens, who has looked good, but it's still early. They're, to me, a sleeper team to take wide receiver, and I could see them taking Jordan Addison.
Yeah, I agree. Now that you say it, I look at the Stroud and JSN thing with them having two picks in the top 12, and then you look at Addison with the Steelers too. I think that makes a lot of sense if they're both there. I want JSN in New England. I don't know if it's going to happen, but pairing up guys makes a lot of sense. Anyway, Bryce Ford-Wheaton, I want to give you the floor. That's your guy. You talked about him on here. He's a freak. He's a DK Metcalf type, and he showed out on Saturday. So tell us about your guy from West Virginia, Alex. What'd you think of BFW?
Yeah, 6'4", 221, running in the 4.3s. He also, and people are going to say, all right, so he's a big guy who runs fast. Big deal. Those guys are never good because they can't move. Go look at his agility drills. Yep. Those were good as well. Complete receiver. And by the way, excellent on special teams as well.
That's what I was going to tee up for you too.
Man, if they hadn't taken Tyquan last year, to do what they did with Tyquan with him, reach a little bit, but you get that guy in the second round, that would feel great. I don't know if they have room for that move right now, but he's the real deal. I've been telling people since September, Bryce Ford-Wheaton is the real deal. I don't think it's going to be in New England, unfortunately, because they have Tyquan, and it's going to be tough to make those two picks in back-to-back years. But, man, if he goes to Seattle, look out. He's going to be a stud.
Why Seattle? Just because Metcalf's there? Why do you?
They develop those guys because there are two players since they started tracking the combine in 2003. There are two players 6'4" or taller to run a sub 4.40 and have a 40-inch vertical. It's DK Metcalf and Tyreek Woolen. So that's their kind of guy.
What's their GM? Schneider,
yeah.
Yeah, that's you're right. That's their guy. So yeah, maybe you see him having the eyes on Bryce Ford-Wheaton. But what other wide receivers stood out to you before we move on to the tight ends, which that's probably going to be another long segment because we both have a tight end that we love on each of our boards. But anything else from the wide receivers? Trey Palmer ran the fastest 40. I don't know how much that helps or hurt because we already knew he was fast. But anybody else from the wide receivers? Charlie Jones, I see in the chat. I don't know if you want to touch on him.
Yeah, I thought Charlie Jones and Rakim Jarrett were the two guys I look at. If there's a day 3 slot guy, if they go out and get a guy like Hopkins who's going to play on the boundary, well, you still need a slot receiver. I thought Rakim Jarrett and Charlie Jones both did very well for themselves. I didn't think Charlie Jones was going to run 4.4. I thought he was going to be 4.6. Yeah. So that was surprising to see. Marvin Mims had a good combine too. I don't know how he fits in New England, but to me is very redundant with Kendrick Bourne, and I really don't want to do the thing where we don't play Kendrick Bourne again.
Yeah, can't happen.
But and Josh Downs was excellent. Josh Downs might have snuck his way into the first round.
Yeah. Anything? What do you think of Keishon Butte?
Yeah,
He was
not
slow.
great measurements, not great numbers. I'm probably cooling off on that take a little bit.
Yeah. Xavier Hutchinson, I thought he looked good in drills, but he ran a 4.53, and so I'm kind of hit or miss on him. I know we took him in our first Patriots beat mock draft. I think in the beginning of the third round or something, that third pick there. But
Yeah.
I think he helped himself a little bit. But again, the receiver room for the Patriots is going to be interesting with the way things work out with Hopkins and the way they work out with whatever happens, whether it's Jared Jeudy or if they make a trade free agency, re-sign Jacoby. That's going to be a big player here, but they definitely have plenty of options on all 3 days of the draft for receivers.